Evening everybody. It is Wednesday, 2nd of November. Oh, I've just realised I'm going to get glare, so let me just, you're not obviously not going to see this, but let me turn the brightness down so there's going to be no reflection in my glasses. And let's carry on with Speyside, and let's carry on with an alphabetical order. So we're on the B's at the moment, and we did Benromach yesterday, so we'll do another Ben. We'll do Benromach. Oh, see, I took the top off and only dropped it then. So this was very, very kindly donated by James Booth. Thank you very much, James. Who I keep confusing with James Hope. I think James Booth is the one that lived down in London that sent me a load of samples. So Benromach is a distillery that is here, and Benromach, as we've mentioned a few times in other the Speyside whiskies and Ben Do and things like that. Ben is Scotch Gaelic for mountain, and Benromach apparently is shaggy mountain. Nothing to do with Scooby-Doo, but a bit of an odd terminology for a mountain. Thanks, mate. Thanks for snotting my bed. Go on your bed. Go on, bugger off. So yes, Benromach, shaggy mountain. So I don't know how you describe a mountain as shaggy, but there you go. It was a distillery that was founded in 1898 by two guys, Duncan McCallan and the fantastically named F.W. Brickman, who sounds very much like a kind of Texan oil magnate. Now, it was founded in 1898. It didn't start producing whiskey until 1900, and then it closed down in 1900. It eventually came into McCallum's, McCallum, as in David McCallum, not McCallan, David McCallum's sole ownership in 1907. It had a very, very rocky start. It was sort of entirely the wrong time to be opening a whisky distillery in Scotland, with the Patterson crisis that was going on that I've mentioned a few times, general malaise in the industry, depression, all sorts of stuff going on. So it reopened and became, a few years later, 1907, David McCallum took over full ownership. It closed down briefly during World War One. I think it was 1915, I think it was when it shut down. It reopened in 1920. It closed again in 1930, was shut for 6 years. In 1938, it was sold to a company called Train and McIntyre that was owned by, I think it was National America Distillers. That was kind of a conglomerate. DCL, Distillers Company Limited, eventually took it over in 1953, which became part of UDV, who eventually became Diageo. But before it became Diageo, when it was with, I think might still be DCL actually, before it became UDV, it shut again in 1983. So it's had a really checkered history, up to the point that in 1993, the independent bottlers Gordon MacPhail bought the distillery. And they bought everything. They bought any of the existing stock that was there and whatever was left in the buildings. Now, there wasn't a great deal, and they bought it in 93, but it wasn't officially opened until October of 1998, because they almost had to rebuild it from scratch. They had to bring in, I think it basically was the washbacks that were left that were usable, and everything else had to be brought in from new. Now, they were an independent bottler and a blender, and they bought the distillery with the view of, we want to do this ourselves. We want our own distillery. And they'll learn on the job. And it really was a case of, right, let's see what we do. Let's make mistakes. Let's try and, just learn as we go along and hopefully make a good fist of it. So it's now a pretty highly regarded range, to be honest. They've done some really good work on it. So you're looking at, so 98 was when it opened. I think it was 2004 when the first bottlings came out, and it was called the Traditional, which was like the unaged version. Right, hello. That was annoying. For some reason it just carried on recording and then stopped and said it had run out of space. So I think I've lost about 3 minutes of what I was waffling on about. Looking back at the video, I was talking about the Traditional, which was the first one, which was the unaged. What I've got here is the 10-year-old 100 proof, which was, can't remember if I said it was from James Booth, Hope, one of them. The one that lives in London, not the one that lives in Sheffield. I think it's James Hope. No, it's James Booth, completely wrong, Ben, who donated this. Thank you very much, James, if I've not said that already, or if I have said it, but if it has recorded. So 100 proof. I think all I've waffled on about proof, I don't think it's even recorded either. 100 proof if you're in the US would be 50% ABV, but in the UK it's different. It's actually 57% ABV. I'm thinking about doing a separate video about proof to try and explain the history behind it and why US is different to UK. It's very complicated. It's a little bit boring, so I've got to find a way of making it semi-interesting in a separate video. But yes, it's 57% ABV, not 50% as you would think if you were in America. So I've already poured and had some. Because I was halfway through talking about it when it cut off and went, I've not been recording, sorry. So I have had some of it. Fortunately, I've got a little bit left to kind of prove that I've had some, but I can still do some with you. The nose it's very unusual. I've not yet added water to this either. I was just about to, fortunately. The nose really reminds me of, there's an element of burnt rubber to it as well as leather. But it's a really pleasant burnt rubber. It's not like the Plimsoll rubber sickliness of the Fujikai or something awful like that. This is a burnt rubber where you're on, I'm not into cars, but if you are into cars and you've gone to like a track day or a race day, and it's the smell of tyres on asphalt, but it's almost like being in a sports car, having gone out on the track, but it's like an old sports car that's got leather interior, and it's old leather interior as well, because there is a definite kind of burnt rubber tyre as well as leatheriness to it as well. So it's a pleasant nose rather than, God, it tastes of rubber, this is weird. The palate so far has been, it needs water to it at 57%, but and I don't think that's cask strength. I think that's been tempered to make it 100%, 100%, it's not 100% proof, it's 100 degree proof. To make it 100 proof, I think they've diluted it slightly to bring it down to that. I don't think it's cask strength. The colouring's also really dark. I don't know if they've added colouring to it. It's Gordon MacPhail, I'd be surprised if they did, but it's such a dark colour that a 10-year-old, it suggests to me that they have. But yeah, on the nose there's this burnt rubber that then doesn't come through on the palate. It's more like it's quite nutty and it's quite drying. So it's more of a... it's like a praline, but it's a slightly, not quite burnt praline, but getting that way, with then the nuttiness of hazelnuts and the slight dryness of something like Brazil nuts, to be honest. Now, if you've seen some of my other videos, I'm not a great fan of nuts generally, but this kind of works. There is enough of a fruitiness to it as well. So I'm going to add a few drops because I do want to knock it down a little bit, just to see if we can temper that fire. Right, I'm going to have to speed up because I'm conscious now that I might run out of room for my next one as well. Okay, water added. Now less of the burnt rubber and more kind of like banana skins are coming through. It's more fruity, but it's bananas, but it's more banana skins and bananas that are going brown rather than ripe bananas. This is slightly brown. My wife loves brown bananas for some reason. I can't stand them when they're getting slightly mushy. She kind of prefers it when the whole skin is brown and it's almost to mush. It's that sort of, she's mental. I can't understand it. And that's not even a pregnancy thing. She's always been that way. But this is definite slightly brown bananas and brown sugar, and not quite banoffee pie, but it's sort of getting that way. Much less of the burnt rubber texture, much less of the leatheriness. Really mellowed out and much fruitier and sweeter and softer. Interestingly though, the nuttiness is still there on the palate, but it's become sweeter. It's now, the praline is less, it's not been cooked as long, so it's a lighter style of praline. And this is very much praline that's been like on your baking sheet, and you've got it all, and you bash it up into bits, and then you stick it in a blender. So that it becomes like a fine powder, which almost sweetens it up even more. It's quite similar to that. It really is. Very praline, nutty character to it. It's not as drying with the water added. I'd be really interested to see what this is like compared to the standard 10-year-old. You know, is it exactly the same once you've added the water in to make it down to that ABV level, or is there something about it where having it at 100 proof actually gives it more something oomph that actually remains there once you've diluted it down? It's a good whiskey. It's a good Speyside whiskey. It's more autumnal. I wouldn't really call it a winter whiskey. This is more autumnal. The nuttiness that's there, it's not heavily sherried. I think it is sherry matured, but it's not massively fruity. It's not Christmas cakey. And even at 100 proof, it's fiery, but it's not really warming. It's because of the dryness, because it feels, it's kind of like sucking some of the liquid out your mouth. So it's not warming and comforting, but it is still a really nice whiskey. But I'd say it's more of an autumnal whiskey. It's more for when, I mean, it's been cold today. It was bloody freezing last night, but the sun's been out. It's been fresh and brisk, but it's not wintry. And this is the time of year that you'd want something like that. Kind of nutty. Starbucks start doing their pumpkin spice and toffee nut lattes and all of this lot because it's kind of that time of year, but we haven't quite got into the sweeter end of that for Christmas. This nuttiness works really well. Nice. Well done, Gordon MacPhail. You have done a bloody good job of that. Carry on, please. That is very, very tasty indeed. Right, I shall switch off and crack on with the next one before I run out of space again. I shall see you at the next one. Cheers.